Hello, everybody. It's great to be here one more time today. My name is Gary Fowler. I'm the CEO, president, and founder of GSD, Get You Done Venture Studios, a premier AI and quantum venture studio located in the heart of Silicon Valley. Today at GSD, we have 180 companies in our portfolio representing 73 countries around the world, and they are some of the best AI and quantum companies. So I'd like to welcome you all to GST Presents Top Global Startups, where I sit down with founders building the systems that quietly power the global economy. Today, we're diving into an industry that still runs on decades-old workflows, massive PDFs, and human judgment under extreme pressure: insurance underwriting. Underwriters today are asked to price risk in a world of climate volatility, energy transition, supply chain disruption, and regulatory complexity, often using tools that were never designed for this level of uncertainty. Joining me is Maariyaah Afzal, founder and CEO of Silas InsurTech, an underwriting and intelligence platform serving commercial property, energy, and specialty insurance. Maariyaah started her career as a commercial property underwriter at AIG, then did something rare. She became a software engineer so she could actually build the technology underwriters need. Today, she works with insurers, reinsurers, MGAs, and Lloyd syndicates to turn complex insurance documents into structured, decision-ready intelligence. We're going to talk about why underwriting is fundamentally broken, why AI has struggled to penetrate insurance, and what the future of risk decision-making looks like. Maariyaah, I'd like to welcome you to the show. Hi, Maariyaah.
Hi, Gary. Very nice to see you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's good to have you here. So, you've lived underwriting from the inside. What's the part of the underwriting process that looks reasonable from the outside, but is chaotic and broken from the inside?
Such an interesting question. I think when I first entered into underwriting, I was under the impression that it was just very analytical. You spend a lot of your time doing risk analysis. But what was really frustrating, and what frustrated me throughout my career, was the fact that as I was developing through, I was still spending so much of my time doing admin tasks and manually repetitive tasks and those things that realistically should have been automated, but there was no real way to do it at that time. And it just became very chaotic. It meant that I was, delving into large volumes of data. I didn't have time to do all of it. I would miss things, human error, like I said earlier, but human error is such a real factor in these decision-making processes that, there are ways around that it shouldn't be such a contributing factor, but it can be. So yeah, probably a lot of those sort of messy admin tasks are the bigger contributors to the chaos.
Why do PDFs still dominate underwriting workflows? And, there's risk associated with that. And what kind of risk does that introduce that people underestimate?
It's probably a combination of PDFs and Excel spreadsheets. And they're always, I think it's insurance is one of those industries that's operated for such a long time, and it's operated well. They generate billions of dollars of revenue. These companies are doing fantastically well for themselves. Every year they report strong numbers, they pay lots of claims. And as a result, there's not been a real push for insurance to kind of modernize and innovate because it's always operated so well. So as a result, we just end up doing the same things and it's so normalized. And that's why I think we still see PDFs, Excel spreadsheets, just email data dumps that are coming our way, because why change something that isn't necessarily broken and is still operating well?
So, did you wake up one day and say, I'm going to be a software engineer? And how did you do?
Um,
Was it like you just said, "Oh, I want to get more technical and get into it"? And what really drove you to make that transition? Because that's a rare leap.
It is. It's definitely not something you hear too often. I'd always had an interest in tech, and I tried to learn to code kind of in my off hours while I was an underwriter. I didn't have so much free time, so I wasn't really able to do that. And then one day, after many years in insurance, I decided to take sabbatical. So I traveled South America, and while I was sitting in Panama, I decided that I wanted to try my hand at something else. And like I said, obviously tech had always really interested me. I'd always wanted to learn how to code, and I figured now or never. So I moved from the UK back to my hometown, Lisbon, in Portugal, decided to do a programming course, became a software engineer, kind of threw myself into the world of AI because it was really taking off at that point. It was almost an accident, but it was a very, very happy accident. And I was able to throw myself into that world. And I think at one point I thought, I don't know why we're not implementing some of these solutions in insurance. And the parts of the job that I found frustrating, we could actually very easily easily in asterisks, but easily automate or streamline. And so I figured, I mean, I had the experience, I knew how to build the solutions, and I had such a drive to kind of solve that problem. So that's kind of what happened. It wasn't one moment necessarily; it was a series of moments, and everything just kind of made sense at that time.
Why did you decide to go to Panama?
Well, I was traveling through South America. So I started off in Brazil and then I went up to Argentina and I just sort of followed a random route that where the wind took me, basically.
And then
Um,
how was it safe when you did it, Maria?
it
Was it
was, yeah.
yeah?
So my family is based in Uganda, on my mom's side. So I spent a lot of time heading out there. So I've seen interesting scenarios where you've got people kind of walking around with military personnel and all of that. So I think that's kind of what tends to scare people a lot when they head out to South America is you see military personnel with big guns and stuff. But that didn't really deter me. I didn't feel unsafe while I was
So
out
wait a
there.
minute, you grew up in Uganda?
No, grew up in Portugal, but family in Uganda. So I spent a lot of
So your
time there.
family's in Uganda, and
Yeah,
so are they still there?
my grandparents are, yes. I just went to visit them.
And wow, that's amazing. And where
It's
were they from? I mean, Afzal is not a Ugandan name. Where's that
no,
from?
very mixed ethnicity, Indian, Persian. It's yeah, a little bit mixed, not totally
Wow,
sure to be honest.
and that's another show. That's amazing.
We can get into that another time.
Um,
To make
so what did you learn once you started building systems instead of using them? What changed in your mentality?
It was an interesting shift in my mentality towards insurance because I think I'd always had the drive to kind of see to problem solve while I was in insurance. So while I was working at AIG, I built some solutions in house while I was there, really basic ones on Excel, but basically things that were built to kind of help underwriters do their jobs a little bit more quickly. And there was uptake on that because I was so passionate about it. I think what I've learned the most kind of in switching positions is that you've really got to prove value from the outside as well. You can build solutions that make perfect sense to me, but you need to really make sure that you're listening to the underwriter's needs, the specific needs of the insurance company, and every company is slightly different as well. So, yeah, building one solution, one size fits all, just does not work for insurance companies because of how different each one operates, and the differences in the way that people underwrite as well. So, really having that focus on, you know, customizing these features, leaving room to build things that are ever so slightly different for one person from another. That was, yeah, the biggest shift I think in my mentality towards building versus sort of using.
So what assumptions do technologists commonly get wrong when they try to fix insurance with AI?
There are quite a few. I saw this firsthand when I was working in insurance because I met with a lot of people who came in and were offering the golden solution to all of the things that we used to find frustrating. And that frustrated us more because there was a huge assumption, number one, that every line of business, if it's in commercial and specialty, is the same. But casualty is very different from commercial property, which is quite different from energy, which is hugely different from cyber insurance. And I think oftentimes that's a mistake that is commonly made, and it's one that I saw firsthand. And it doesn't work. If you build something for one line of business, it will not work for the other. So understanding the nuance between the lines of business and kind of respecting the insurance and the different lines of business, the different verticals is so important when you're building.
How did you come up with the name Silas?
It's an interesting story. So it's Latin in origin, and there's a story around it, which basically was a fighter who went through a treacherous forest, and I quite like that story. And he comes out victorious, of course. So that was a nice story. It's also the family cat's name.
Oh, that
So
makes
the story
that's
behind it is lovely, and it also happens to
Silas
be
Marner, Shakespeare and all that stuff. But no, I get it.
yeah, yeah. There's a emotional attachment to it too.
So, how did your underwriting background shape the way Silas was designed differently from traditional insurance tech tools?
I think domain knowledge is so important. I think when you're building and I think the same stands true for a lot of these types of institutions, insurance, banking, legal tech as well. I think having the insider knowledge and understanding the the frustrations, the pain points, the core pain points of the underwriters to build solutions is so important. Because as I said, obviously a lot of these companies and even the bigger companies will be able to come in and offer solutions, but having that granular level detail, having that domain knowledge, having that ability to go in, speak with underwriters and underwriting managers and CEOs and truly understanding what their problems are has meant that we're able to build solutions that properly reflect the needs of the underwriters in the insurance industry as a whole. And I think, I think there's no replacing that domain knowledge, and being able to go in and really see eye to eye with your clients is something that's so important.
Where does human judgment still matter most? And where does AI consistently outperform even experienced underwriters?
Yeah, I mean, so with commercial lines and specialty lines, I think that humans will always be a necessity. I think human judgment, you can't replace it. And I think we can automate and streamline all the processes around it. The aim of Silas is not to replace underwriters. It's to make their lives easier. It's to allow them to make faster decisions and more accurate decisions, more importantly. And it's about taking these huge volumes of data, again, like I said, that underwriters don't have time to look at, they don't have time to analyze, and they kind of make assumptions. It's where those assumptions come in that we play a huge role. It's making sure that they don't have to make assumptions. They've got the evidence in front of them and they can make decisions. I don't think when it comes to specialty lines and doing this, the specialized nature of commercial policies and commercial property policies, you can replace the underwriter at all. They will always be so pertinent to that process and making that final decision. But where we come in is kind of helping them all around those processes, so they get to sit there and spend their time doing what matters the most, which is decision making and analysis. So yeah, I don't think we can replace them.
It's interesting. I had a conversation with one of the original persons from Palantir the other day. I had breakfast with him, and the former chief of staff. And we talked about trust. Trust is everything in insurance. And what does AI have to do differently in underwriting compared to other industries? And how does that work? So, do we trust the systems? Do we trust the AI?
I think it's such a good point, to be honest. And it's a conversation that I've had a lot with underwriters and underwriting managers. The way that we've navigated that is actually to just provide evidence, because inherently trusting something to help you make decisions when you're putting out millions of dollars in capacity is not something that people are going to be willing to do immediately. So what we've done at every step of the way is to provide evidence of where we're pulling this data from, where we're extracting this from, why we perform this analysis in the way that we have, because we need to build credibility, we need to build trust in AI. And also, we don't want to sit there and suggest that we are hitting 100% accuracy with AI. That's not quite feasible yet. So we want to make sure that where we are getting things wrong, we're very clear and very transparent about it. Even if it happens, very, very infrequently, it's still something that we have to be aware of. So asking people to blindly trust us was not the route that we wanted to go down. We didn't want to take that path. We wanted to say, it could be wrong at times, but here is the evidence that shows you where we're pulling this from. So yeah, trust is incredibly important. And as I said, obviously insurance companies, underwriters are putting out $100 million in capacity. So they're not small figures that you're playing with. So trust is incredibly important. And it's our job to make sure that underwriters are comfortable with the work that we're producing as well, and the products that we're offering them.
How do you think about explainability and auditability when underwriting decisions can be scrutinized years later?
Sorry, could you say that again?
What do you think about explainability and auditability when underwriting decisions can be scrutinized years later?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that we've contended. It's something that I had to deal with when I was an underwriter as well. When we would be audited, it would be 5 years worth of data. And that's kind of why we're building the features that we are, because we want to make sure that we're able to keep track of all of that. The way that we currently do things, or the way that insurance, when I was still working there, we were logging things in different folders. There was no consistency amongst it. It was a little bit fragmented. And as such, it meant that the underwriters were putting in overtime to try and pull together this information so that when we are audited eventually, even if it's in a few years' time, we're trying to gather all that information from different places. Using platforms like ours will allow underwriters to kind of bypass that and be comfortable knowing that all that information is stored, and all of the decision making has been adequately processed and has been validated and approved. And yeah, I think having features like ours and working with our types of our platform will allow underwriters to do so and maneuver those situations with so much more ease and a lot less stress and panic.
So what's been harder, Maria, the technical problem or getting organizations to change how they evaluate risk?
I think we both know the answer is the latter. I think it's been an interesting one over the past few years. So we kind of unofficially started in 2024 and then incorporated last year. And the narrative is definitely shifting. Insurance companies are definitely a lot more comfortable with the concept of AI, of implementing tech-enabled solutions throughout their processes, and I'm definitely starting to see that shift. It's been quite an intense shift even this first month of the year. But the first year, it was a lot of sort of the educational piece, explaining to underwriters where we were coming in, how we were helping, why it was so useful to use AI. Last year was a lot more of underwriters and insurance companies exploring those opportunities. Now we're starting to see the shift of no longer exploring opportunities, but actively looking for solutions to enable their capabilities. So I think it's a process. As I said, insurance companies have operated very well for many years, but I think now with the pressure on expenses, operational expenses, the market being the way that it is, it's a soft market at the moment in commercial property and energy. And as such, there's a bit of a push even from senior leadership, executive leadership, management to kind of look for these solutions as opposed to exploring loosely what is out there. So we're definitely starting to see that shift in narrative and perception as well, which is great.
As climate risk, energy transition, and specialty risks accelerate, what capabilities will underwriters need that they don't have today?
Well, climate risk is an interesting one. So within the energy sector, obviously it's with the geopolitical situations that we've got going on as well, it becomes a little bit more of a we're not sure where things are headed on the insurance side. Where we come into it, and insurtechs play a really strong role in this, is helping with predictive capabilities as well, or helping to understand kind of what your portfolio looks like currently and how it can look going forward, and helping to sort of map out where things might head and what the impact might therefore be on the insurance companies. I think it's safe to say that with the focus veered away from ESG incentives, for example, it's a little bit more difficult to ascertain kind of what the next few years look like. That doesn't mean to say that we can't help in that process and help to sort of map out the possibilities. But yeah, it's a little uncertain at the moment. That's definitely an interesting one, I think, across the board.
Yeah, I had a dinner with one of the top politicians actually globally, and we were talking about this. Lots of changes taking place for all kinds of different reasons. It's amazing actually. And you look at an insurance, sometimes you're right about the meridional shift. I mean, the UK could be in another 10 years could have snow, right? Because of the global slowing down. And people don't realize it's going to change everything. The last time it happened was 11,000 years ago. And
Yeah.
it's interesting. Anyhow, let's fast forward 5 years. What do you think underwriting will look like that sounds radical today, but will feel completely normal in 5 years?
It's not even going to sound that radical because insurance obviously moves. It's a little bit more traditional, a little bit more conservative. But I think eventually we'll have just fully tech-enabled insurance companies. I think underwriters will still have a prominent role in that process. I don't think that's ever going to go away. But I think in the way that we operate, what we're trying to do is trying to bring underwriters not only just sort of automating and streamlining the processes around underwriting, but actually bringing intelligence to the underwriting process as well. And there's been some hesitancy around that because people aren't really sure what that will look like. But I think in 5 years' time, I think we'll really start to see that shift towards just fully tech-enabled companies. And I think the ones that are not as tech-enabled will struggle. Their P&Ls will reflect that. And it doesn't sound that radical because I think that is the way that we're veering across many industry types, but just because of the way that sort of insurance operates and the fact that it's stayed quite the same over 100 years, I think that will be quite a radical shift. But I think especially the younger generations, they're all using ChatGPT to do their work. And I think as they start to progress, I think we'll start to see a real shift towards why aren't we using more AI in our everyday working flows? And I think we'll really start to see that shift, which will be great. Doesn't sound that radical, but I think for insurance it probably is.
The one thing about it, I read a lot about this, and I guess I've written almost 900 articles now. And,
Wow.
and so one of the challenges that we have is that we're not using these superpowers to be able to help us. And there's going to be a point in time where we all have one single interface, and it'll have empathy and compassion. It'll be your guardian angel, like your grandmother, that loves you. efficiently. And we've been building some of those models, but this will help you no matter what it is. If I want to buy insurance, I want to make it sure that the rates are right. It's protect you like that. And
Yeah.
the Germans have a phrase, the sum of the parts equal the whole. They got it from Aristotle. But that's what's happened is everything is coming together as one. And people don't get it and they're uncomfortable with the change because it's moving faster than it ever has. The amount of
It's
data on
always
the
everything.
it's insane. And so, doing what you did, taking the risk and moving from, I don't want to say cushy job, but a good job into something risk is important. But the other thing is a lot of time these companies fail. It's not so easy doing a startup. There's a reason 9 out of 10 fail. But remember the operational expertise, access to capital, network, and contact.
Mhm.
Those three resilient team, any company can become a unicorn. We forget. So, for founders building in regulated legacy industries, Maria, what's one lesson you wish you had known earlier?
I think if I could go back to me 2 years ago, just before, I think I would, the most important thing is really knowing your audience, understanding your clients. Now, I was one of the clients, but I think understanding the wider audience would have been really good from the get-go, really advantageous. So spending as much time with clients, really listening to them, really understanding. Don't assume, even if you've worked in the industry, don't assume that you know everything. Spend time, listen, because oftentimes the overall thesis, the idea will remain the same, but the devil is in the details, right? So really listening to what they're looking for, really listening to that attention to detail, so you can build out the most appropriate, the best platform for what you're serving for. Not just a platform that you would use, but a platform that the industry would use. Is what I would recommend. Really listen. Maybe a little bit cliche, but really listen to your clients, because I think we kind of assumed we knew what we were doing, and then as time progressed, we realized actually there was more to it. There was a little bit more to it. There was some nuance to it, and now we're doing it. So better late than never. But yeah, I would have loved to have done that from the start.
That you just talked about is critically important for all the startups out there. One of the things you do, and I do this all the time with all of my companies. So my thing is I go interview 50 potential customers.
Mm.
And I take my phone and I take my computer. I go down through and use my phone to record the conversation so I have it. I'm going to share it with my technical folks. And I go down through and present the features before I build them. Because the last thing I want to build is something nobody wants.
That doesn't, yeah, there's no product market fit. It's
Yeah,
true. It's a lesson we have to learn.
a lot in the customer development. In fact, Bob Dorff and Steve Blank, Bob wrote the book, The Startup Owner's Manual,
Oh,
and
yeah.
good friend of mine. And I followed that logic forever because you don't want to build things. You don't want to waste time and money. Because if you build stuff nobody wants, nothing good. There's a reason 9 out of 10 companies fail. And that's part of it. And the other thing is building a story. The storytelling is critically important. Building a story where you paint pictures with words. That is critically important. Very few people do that, right? But
Mm.
doing that will make the difference between a company that'll just exist and one that's going to turn into a unicorn or decacorn. I've
Mhm.
done personally gone down through that journey, so it's important. So,
Yeah.
Maria, if you want to stay on after the show, that would be great. We can spend a few minutes talking. I want to say that this is an incredible conversation. Underwriting intelligence feels less like a feature and more like a foundational shift in how risk is understood. And for all of you out there, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules. Maria, how can people get a hold of you?
Through LinkedIn, through email, either or is absolutely fine.
So reach out to Maria on LinkedIn or through the website. It's
Mhm.
great. Stay happy, stay safe, and stay healthy. And I'll be back to you again soon with another exciting edition as GSD presents Top Global Startups. My name is Gary Fowler, and I'm your host. See you later. And thanks, Maria.
Thanks so much, Gary.